Okay everyone, welcome to Tales from the Crib, a show where we talk about movies, books, and TV shows that you should mess up your kids with. Today we will be talking about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory starring Gene Wilder, which is one of my favorite movies. It's about a guy who owns a candy factory. He invites 5 little kids because of golden tickets to come to his factory to see which one is the least rotten. Chaos ensues. When I was a kid, my parents showed me this movie. It was one of those ones that we were allowed to grow up with despite what it was about. They enjoyed it, so we had to watch it with them, which I was lucky for. Overall, I'm here to tell you why these movies are messed up and why your kids should watch them. So here goes. First of all, this movie is threatening on so many accounts, just by character. The first threat we encounter is the Tinkerer. He is this guy who basically corners Charlie, the main protagonist of the film, in front of the chocolate factory and tells him,
"You see, nobody ever goes in. Nobody ever comes out."
And then he backs up like some absolute murderer. Eyes all wide. If that's not an image that will haunt you for the rest of your life, you're wrong. So that kind of sets the tone for the overall hauntingness of this film. The second threat we encounter is basically after Charlie gets the golden ticket in the first place. Slugworth. He pops out of nowhere with each of these kids as they get the golden tickets and are celebrating their finding of these golden tickets. He shows up around the globe, and his encounter, particularly with Charlie, he knows the kid's paper route. He knows his way home, and his overall presence is so threatening. He just has the scar on his face. Physically, he is so imposing, and his eyes are weirdly small. He's like Judge Doom from, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and it's just like Creepsville, more or less. But the third creep of creepers we encounter are the Oompa Loompas. Now, growing up, you either loved these characters, loved these guys, or were completely perturbed by the concept. Basically, in many ways, slaves to their captor, Willy Wonka. They come in whenever one of the kids gets messed up and sing these super eerie songs, always set to the same tune, and they're orange with green hair. Whose idea was that? It's disturbing. They're like blue meanies, except for ugh. The most subtle, yet unnerving character threat that we encounter is Willy Wonka himself. But dude, he's Willy Wonka, played by Gene Wilder. How bad can it be? Well, he comes out of the chocolate factory for the first time. Immediately what he does is lie. He comes out of the chocolate factory looking like some decrepit old bean. And he's not. He does this flip thing and he's just like, hey, and the crowd goes crazy, but he immediately lies to the crowd and all of these children and their parents. And as it goes on, as they go into the chocolate factory, the hands happen. And again, a threat. A surprise.
Little surprises around every corner, but nothing dangerous.
Bull. As he's leading them into the chocolate room, he continually threatens the children with harm.
If you want a view.
And then he goes on like a douche to pull out one of Mike TV's hairs.
Want to change the world. There's nothing to it.
What the heck, Wonka? Holy crap. And again, as we go on through the film, each child, spoiler alert, falls under the prey of some incident caused by themselves. And Wonka doesn't, aside from warning them, he lets it happen. Because he knows these children. He has been paying attention to these children's lives. He leads them into places in the factory where he knows that things are going to go sour for them. And he tells them, he warns them, don't do this, don't do that, just be good. Their parents, with no control over these children, do the same, don't do this. I skipped over the bit in the tunnel because if we've seen the film, we all know how messed up that is.
There's no earthly way of knowing.
He's singing.
And it's the first time we see a more violent side of the character of Willy Wonka. And it's mentally jarring. And the images we get to see in that in that part of the film are just, wow. They're a lot. They're a lot. I mean, a chicken gets its head cut off. What is that all about? But we see this side of him, and that side, again, pops out at the end of the film when all the children besides Charlie have disappeared. Wonka goes back into his office. Grandpa Joe is having none of it. I don't like Grandpa Joe, by the way. He's kind of a douche the whole way through. They go into Wonka's office, which is unnerving in itself. Everything's cut in half, which is very strange, which I think is a clear reflection of the man Wonka himself. There's two sides of the guy. Grandpa Joe confronts Wonka, and there's something different about him, and suddenly he snaps. And it comes out of nowhere, and being a child who is being, you know, a child at this time, it comes very suddenly. So far what we've seen from this man is calm, funny, whimsical, probably. And now he's yelling and saying words that we won't understand, you know what I mean? Like the whole Latin thing from his contract that all children had to sign. For kids who are not used to their parents lashing out at them, this is something new. And it can be terrifying. And then there's that golden moment after it all happens of Charlie giving him the gobstopper and Wonka turning around completely again, saying it was all a test. And you're like, what do you like when this is not a test, dude? What else are you willing to do? And we figured every threat there was for Charlie, at least, was non-existent pretty much, despite all the possibilities of definite harm being in the way of this chocolate factory. And immediately after this, he takes them to the great glass elevator, or the Wonkavator, which is... Now, immediately after all this craziness happens, Wonka takes Charlie and his grandfather, Joe, to the great glass elevator, or Wonkavator as it's called in this, and tells him, I haven't pushed this button. Charlie pushes the button, and they don't know if they're gonna die or not. Wonka doesn't even know if they're gonna die. This is not a safe man to be around. Overall, his flippancy with his life and other human lives is just pretty much non-existent. And it's insane. Why should you show your kids this movie? First of all, it's a classic. Again, our parents grew up with this, had the gall to show it to us. In my mind, that makes it something that should keep going. It's its own entity, and there's nothing else like it out there. And again, Gene Wilder. This is one of those movies that made him a legend, that made him something completely new. An actor that was like no other actor before him. Show your kids his other movies. Another reason is because the overall lesson of this film is entitlement. Yes, each kid has its own theme. Mike TV has had his brain completely washed out by television. Augustus Gloop is a glutton and pays no attention to anything else except food. Veruca Salt herself is selfish and needy and whiny and spoiled rotten by her father and her mother. Is that it? Oh, and Violet Beauregard. She chews gum? I don't know. But the overall lesson here, outside of their own particular circumstances, is entitlement. But in my opinion, that is a big problem these days with kids. As generations have gone by, each parent has been like, I'm not going to be like my parents, and has become more lax on their own children, kind of making them ungrateful little jerks. But this movie teaches the lesson, if you're good like Charlie, he's kind of a... If you're good like Charlie, bad things don't necessarily have to happen to you, which is kind of a false lesson to learn, but still a good one. If you behave more or less, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be treated well, and not bad things are gonna happen. And that's an incredible lesson to learn, especially these days. So, recommendation-wise for age gap. Toddler age onward, this film is great to show them. You can enjoy it as well because, again, nostalgia, you grew up with it yourself. So yeah, go ahead. If you feel like disturbing your children with this certain film, be my guest. If you feel like yelling at me about my, suggestions, tell me in the comments. I'm glad to hear it. Anyway, this has been Tales from the Crib. I'll see you next time, hopefully. Make suggestions. Let me know what's going on. Bye! Da 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 da